This video is sponsored by Obscura VPN. I'm painting up all the different cultures of the orcs, and the one that I'm focusing on today is the culture that my orcs come from, and that is the evil Sunz, the orcs who go fast. These are orcs who cannot hold still for even a single moment. Every second of their lives is spent either going fast or thinking of ways to go fast. My first connection to the orcs was the box Assault on Blackreach, which is a 2-player starter set that featured the Ultramarines versus the orcs. That was my start with orcs, but the thing that really got me into them was the Orc Warbiker. I have quite a collection of Orc Warbikers. I actually painted up an army for my cousin who used to run a game store in exchange for him giving me many boxes of Orc Warbikers. I have as many as Games Workshop will allow me to take in-game, and I love these suckers. The big, cobbled together bikes, all of the different bits and bobs. I've done some pretty heavy kit bashing and converting on every single one of these guys, and I love them. The idea of orcs careening into combat on these monstrous machines just makes me happy. The evil Sunz produce orcs that are natural pilots, and a lot of the mechs whose job is to keep these war machines running smoothly. I have a huge collection of evil Sunz in my Mad Max orcs, but I've actually never painted one properly, and so it's time to change that. Going back to my boys box, this is the new-ish Monopose orc sculpt that came out a while ago. Much better than the OG orc boys from the late 90s, but without the extra bits to turn them into Shootas or Slugga boys, so the older kit has managed to stick around all these years. I picked out an orc who is shooting with a snazzy Shoota. I feel like evil Sunz would love their guns. After all, bullets move super fast, especially when they're painted red. I drilled out the barrel of the Shoota, making a dent with the point of my hobby knife, then drilling it out with my pin vise. I used this Dremel reaming bit in my pin vise to ream the opening up a little bit more. It's kinda like a step drill bit. It lets me work the hole into the exact right size. Then I finished assembling my orc. This is a push fit kit, so no glue is required to build it normally. But I don't want to stop at normally, I want to add some alterations. This bolted on little spike on his shoulder pad, these could be seen as any orc culture, but they are somewhat unique to the Goths, so I want to cut these off and file them away so I'm left with a smooth shoulder pad. And you know what else is smooth? This transition to today's sponsor, Obscura. Are you tired of the constant intrusion into your privacy on today's internet? It used to be that the internet was a place where you didn't have to worry about thieves, but now trackers are always after your information all the time. That's where Obscura is here to help. Obscura VPN is the perfect way to ensure your browsing history is kept secure and away from all those prying eyes. It's easy to log in and start using the app. Simply log in with your account number, and that's it. No emails, no passwords, just safe browsing. What makes Obscura different from those other VPNs is it doesn't require you to link to any kind of account to start working. It also works by blending seamlessly with other internet activities. Where other VPNs would be flagged and blocked, Obscura passes through, meaning less hassle for you and more time browsing the web without a fuss. Once it's active, you'll hardly even know it's there, keeping you safe from online intrusions. To get Obscura, you don't even need to give up any of your personal information. If you want a privacy-focused VPN, you can go to obscura.com/eons or use the code EONS at checkout to get 25% off a subscription to get started today. With these push-fit models, sometimes you get some unsightly gaps. This orc has one right over his shirt, and I want to get rid of it, and the easiest way is to drip some ultra-thin super glue into the gap and then really squeeze the plastic together so the gap becomes as small as possible. Then I ran over this spot with a sanding twig to sand down the plastic here a little to make the gap vanish. Also, sanding twigs available from EonsOfBattle.com. Where the gap goes through his armor strap, it's too wide for the glue trick, so instead I cut a little piece of plastic card. This sheet is 0.3mm, and I cut off a tiny little rectangle and I glued this over the gap, so it looks like a buckle of his belt instead of just a mistake. The last change I want to make has to do with the advent of 11th edition. Orc boys are now going to get to carry both their weapon options, the Shoota and the Slugga Choppa. So I went back to my old Orc boy sprue and I grabbed myself a Choppa. I chopped off the old Orc hand using my nippers and knife to hack away most of the fingers, then to fine tune it down with my nail files and sanding twigs. Holding it up to my boy, I think attaching it to one of his armor straps will be good. I used my Dremel with a round grinding bit to grind a little round channel that I can glue the handle of his Choppa into. Then I loaded up with plastic glue and I stuck down his battle axe. To make it look like it's actually attached to something, I took some plastic card and I bent it around a paintbrush. Then I wrapped it around the handle of the axe and plastic glued it to his armor straps. It's not an amazing holster, but it's good enough for orc work. Now my little evil son is ready for paint. Inside of the evil Sunz is the Cult of Speed, and the poster child for the Cult of Speed is the Orc Warbiker, and I love the Orc Warbiker. They don't set the entire world on fire, but they're pretty good. They take an orc boy and they put it up to toughness 6, 3 wounds with a 4-up save and a 6-up invuln. And this comes equipped with the twin Daka guns, 5 attacks apiece at the closest eligible target within half range. Like these guys, they get to have fun in the shooting, they get to have fun in the movement phase with their super fast speed, they get to have fun in the shooting phase with their daka guns, and then they get to have fun in the combat phase with their choppas. These guys, it's the pinnacle of the orcs. I currently own the maximum allowable number of orc warbikers, which is 18, 3 squads of 6. And you know, if we're just hypothesizing, maybe in an 11th edition, Games Workshop writes a detachment where orc warbikers get battle lines so you can take more of these guys. And I will be taking the maximum number of warbikers that the rules will allow me. Now, the orc warbikers, along with the storm boys, death coptas, and battle buggies, are the poster childs for the cult of speed, but there is still precedent for a lowly orc boy to be a member of the evil Sunz. This little guy needs to ride around in the orc trucks in order to one day have enough teeth so that he can buy something loud and fast. He is an acolyte to the cult of speed, and he needs to be painted up in the Speed Freaks colors. I grabbed a little Cobalt Keep 32mm magnet base, and I glued my orc's feet down with some thick super glue. For this guy, I'm thinking some dead barren earth, so I took some wood glue, spread it all over the ground in preparation for some sand. I sprinkled on some small pebbles, coarse grit sand, and then some fine grained sand. I have plans for this later, and it'll require this intense texture. Now to get started on my evil son. Most of the paint job will be red, but I want to start first with the black parts. I put some grim black speed paint over his boots, making sure to miss his steel toes. And I also painted this over the belts on his armor straps. Then for the pants, I'm thinking a light color will look good alongside the red, so I took some Bony Matter speed paint and I glazed this over the legs, and once it was dry, I did a second coat to the lower half of his pants to make these look darker and more saturated on the bottom. Now it's time for the red, and red is a tricky color. I think I'll skip the speed paint and go straight to the regular acrylics. Resplendent red. I mixed a little bit of black into this paint and I base coated all the lower parts of the red onto his shirt, his armor, and I also painted this onto his armbands and the axe head and part of his gun. With the underside painted, I took pure resplendent red and I painted this on all the top facing parts of his clothing and armor. 2 coats got me full saturation, and then I mixed some water to make a glaze and I painted this right where the bright red meets the dark red to get some smooth transitions. I'm liking how the red is looking, and I think I can push it further with some legendary red. This is a red with some orange in it, and I painted this in a smaller patch along the shoulders and I edge highlighted everything. This color will push the saturation of the red even further. The red ones go fasta. It's the most important part of an evil son. Painting up an orc boy in red really brings me back to a million years ago, painting up orc boys in my mom's basement, painting up the Assault on Black Reach orcs. And it took me so long to land on a color scheme. I repainted that army so many times. I painted them red, then I started to kind of randomly paint them different colors. Then I sort of painted them a weird hybrid mix of Goth and Speed Freaks. And then luckily in 2015, Mad Max Fury Road came out, and then I decided, I'm just gonna do that. Red does look really, really good though. And now it is time for the weapons. I took one of my favorite colors, Noble Skin, a brownish blackish color that looks really good as the base for metal. I put this over the unpainted parts of the Shuda and all over the handles and rivets of his choppa. Now I want to try and make his shoulder pad extra fancy. I took some ice yellow and I thinned this down with some water so it'll flow off the tip of a sharp brush, and I painted a grid over the shoulder. If the lines are thin enough, I can fill in half of these cells and it'll look like a perfect checkerboard. And I'm using the ice yellow color because I want to end up with bright yellow checkers, but the ice yellow will have better coverage. Once it was happy with my checkers, to edit the colors of these yellow checks, I took some Fugue and orange and I glazed this over the low spots right over the red and yellow. The red is too dark and saturated for the orange wash to show up over it, so it only darkens the ice yellow. And speaking of that yellow, I took some Bad Moon's yellow and I thinned this down a lot, and I glazed this over the remaining ice yellow. I was worried that this color would show up over the red, but thinned down a lot, I could glaze it right over without changing the red at all. And my checkers were exactly how I wanted them. Now to dip into something I haven't messed around with much with orcs, and that is decals. I grabbed some Evil Suns and I set them to soak on my wet palette, and I slid one right over the checkerboarding. This shoulder is a shrine to the Evil Suns. And I also put some more Evil Suns over the head of his choppa. Evil Suns and members of the Cult of Speed actually appreciate their equipment, so they tend to be better cared for and appreciated than the other orc clans. I sprayed over the decal with some satin varnish to get rid of that shiny decal paper, and then I took some silver paint and I did some sponging over the metal for paint chips. That crisp, clean paint job doesn't last long on the battlefields of 40k. After that sponging, I did a little bit more dry brushing so that all of the edges of the metal had a nice silvery shine. Now that's an orc boy. The only thing left is his skin, and I want another try at a technique that I've used before on orc skin, Familiar Pink. I water this color down a lot with speed paint medium, and I glaze this all over the lower parts of the orc skin. I made this paint so thin that it barely tints the white primer, only showing up in the recesses where it pools and dries. Once that was dry, I grabbed my Ghillie Dhu speed paint, a bright green color, and I thinned this down a little, but not nearly as much as the familiar pink. About 1 drop of thinner to 3 parts paint, and I put this all over the skin. This worked really well. A little tinge of that magenta color shows through, but mostly it just makes the green dark and saturated in the recesses. I love this guy, he has a really nice retro feel. Holding him up to a truly retro orc, you can see the family resemblance. In just 26 short years, orc models have changed a lot. I hit my orc's eyes with some red paint, and I feel like the familiar pink was so light I don't even need to hit the teeth. The magenta glaze was subtle enough to make his fangs look good for me. And you know what else looks good with a nice coat of pink? EonsOfBattle.com. Over there we have all kinds of hobby goodies, Great Tide Studio bits to spice up your Space Marines, Army Painter paints, brushes, basing cork, and we have glue. Ultra thin and ultra thick super glue. And we have terrain. It's the best way to support us doing what we do by getting a membership. Each month members get a credit good for any one terrain pack I've ever made or the brand new one. In April we have created the Armored Accessories Bits Pack. This set is full of awesome components to make your vehicles as unique and characterful as your infantry, with all kinds of equipment, storage, barrels and tools for your tanks to carry, seals and tassels that are vehicle sized, big ol' missiles, and extra armor. So many pieces of armor plating in different sizes and styles so your tanks can get the armor treatment that looks best for them. Whether it's a futuristic war machine, an ancient Hulk, or a chaotic monstrosity, these accessories will have your tanks covered. This bits pack was by tank players for tank players and is available both digitally and physically printed for you at EonsOfBattle.com. Now for that base. I want an ultra dry dead desert, so I started out with Brigadine Brown over the floor. This is a desaturated brown color, and I did 2 coats to get full coverage. Then for the dust, I took some Vallejo Pigment Desert Dust, a very light tan powder, and I added a few drops of Flow Improver and I put this all over the base. This is a little bit like a wash, and I really dumped it on so the pigments will settle into the cracks in between the grains of sand. It doesn't look like it did much of anything while it's wet, but once it dries, that tan color is intense, showing up in between all the dark grains of sand. As I waited for the rest of the pigment powders to dry, I hit the rim of the base with some black paint, and my first classic Speed Freak is ready for the tabletop. That is a good looking orc. And it was a really fun paint job. It gave me a lot of flashbacks to my Black Templars, not just because red, but also because a lot of the big things on them painted up really quick with simple processes, mostly speed paint. And then I could spend the real time on the fun painting, like the checkerboarding and decals on his shoulder. Ooh, this guy is spicy. I don't paint with a lot of reds in my orc army because I'm doing the Mad Max Wasteland orcs, but the red is fun. One faction of the orcs that I haven't really gone down very much is the shooty style of orc, and which is a shame because I really like the flash kits and I do want a big blob of flash kits, and they would look really good in these colors. In fact, on the box art for flash kits, they have a lot of red and yellow on them. When I started painting orcs, that was back before the invention of speed paint and contrast paint, the dark times. And now I can't imagine painting without the transparent colors. It makes things so much easier. I used to be really afraid of things like skin because I just knew that it was gonna involve a lot of layering and blending. And back then I didn't have a lot of experience to be able to tackle something like that. But now, just being able to throw on some contrast and speed paint and have it look like this, it's made painting quite a bit more enjoyable. I am very happy with my little evil son, and I'm looking forward to trying out some of the other flavors of orcs in the very near future. Thanks for watching.